We're all set. Thank you.
Thank you, staff member Eldon.
You're missing a lot of work.
We'll go back into public session after a 5-minute break. We will have lunch at noon. We had left off completing review of 855-183-0370, and now we move to discussion on 855-183-0400.
We can present. That works. Here she is.
All right, I went for a walk.
All right, they're ready. We're ready for 0400. Okay. You take over?
Yeah. Live.
We're live, correct. Yep.
All right, staff member Davis, 855-183-0400. This is labeling compounded non-sterile preparations or CNSPs. So during the work group's first meeting, the work group consensus was that these rules should not simply restate the USP standards, but should include items that are in addition to the USP standards. Overall, agency staff have made an effort not to duplicate USP and the rules related to labeling, MFRs and CRs, but to direct the registrar or licensee to the applicable USP standard. The original version of these rules that was proposed that the work group saw, we had one section on labeling that included both CNSPs and CSPs, and the work group determined it would be better if we separated it out. So you see it as two separate rules because there are different requirements in USP as to what has to be on the label for each type of compound, and then that changes what we have in addition to. Please note this section of rule is the additional labeling requirements. So it states, in addition to the labeling requirements specified in USP 795, OAR 855041, OAR 855043, and OAR 855139, the label of a CNSP must prominently and legibly contain the following at a minimum. Paren 1, the strength of each active ingredient. Note the current rule in paren 1, so the language you're seeing is against the rule that we already have on the books for labeling. So this is an existing rule. We're making modifications and edits. You required the generic name or the official name of each active ingredient. This rule is struck in the proposed rules as the 795 standard requires the active ingredients and their amounts, activities, or concentrations to be on the label. What it doesn't include is the strength. And so that's why the language for the strength of each active ingredient remains in our rule. In paren 2, the route of administration. Paren 3, indication that the preparation is compounded. Paren 4, handling, storage, or drug-specific instructions, cautionary information, and warnings as necessary or appropriate for the proper use and patient safety. Paren 5, compounding facility name and contact information if the CNSP is to be sent outside of the facility or the healthcare system in which it was compounded. And then the reference by adoption. Back to you, Board President Doyle, for board discussion.
Member Doyle discussing 855-183-0400. We begin with comments from Board Member Chin.
Board Member Chin supports this as written. I think these are important. Prescription.
Member Joyce.
Board Member Joyce, yeah, in regards to CNSPs, this is definitely appropriate at minimum. Thank you.
Member Patel.
Board Member Patel, I would just say, just follow the USP 797 labeling requirement rule. There is no need to add other stuff because sometimes you can't fit everything into that label. It does not make any sense to me. Well, just follow the USP 797 for labeling.
Minutes.
No comment. Board Member DeBarmore. the elements that were here were shoulds,
Oh, please.
sorry. The elements that were here are shoulds. And was okay with this one. I understand sometimes it's extremely hard to get items on that. Would be interested to hear though from stakeholders. It's put forth.
Board Member Doyle, Board Member DeBarnware, can you clarify your comment about the shoulds?
In USP, these, all three, or all the elements that are here are all shoulds, not musts.
Right.
And that's why they're here. So I'm interested to hear from. I can see putting them forward and then hearing from stakeholders at that point. Yeah, about becoming musts.
Board Member Hall?
Hall. Or what's written here, especially, I mean, strength needs to be on there. So that's a must. I mean, unless I hear something different, I would agree with what's here.
Member Beeman?
Beeman, I look forward to hearing public comment when the time is ready. So I will go with this as it is for right now.
Board Member Doyle, it appears that we have 3 board supporters and 2 people that are okay with this moving forward. Do you, Member Davis?
Staff Member Davis, the next rule is 855-183-0410, line 744 on the mailing. So same as just discussed, but these are the CSP labeling requirements that are in addition to USP. So in addition to the labeling requirements specified in USP 797, OAR 855041, 043, and 139, the label of the CSP must prominently and legibly contain the following at a minimum. Paren 1, the strength of each active ingredient to include the identity of the base solution for a sterile parental preparation. 2, the route of administration. 3, the rate of infusion or titration parameters for a sterile parental preparation. 4, indication that the preparation is compounded. 5, handling, storage, or specific drug-specific instructions, cautionary information, and warnings as necessary or appropriate for proper use and safety. 6, compounding facility name and contact information that the CSP is to be sent outside of the facility or healthcare system in which it was compounded. And then the publications available by reference statement. Back to you, Board President Doyle, for further discussion.
Member Doyle, we're discussing 855-183-0410. Conversation with Board Member Joyce.
Board Member Joyce, yeah, I mean, everything here looks like standard practice to me already from my experience. However, I don't quite understand 766 indication that the preparation is compounded. I mean, I don't understand. You look at the label, but does it need to be quote indicated that this preparation is compounded? I don't. Compounded at some point, whether it was done at the facility in the hospital setting or prior to that. I just don't understand why that's there. Other than that, everything else seems to make sense to me. Specifically even the warning labels, like, is this a paralytic? Is this, you need the warnings on your IV admixture. Is this a high risk insulin IV drip that, you need those warning labels there. Compounding facility, if information, if the CSP is sent outside, yeah, that everything here makes sense. It's just indication that the preparation is compounded is kind of confusing to me. Yeah, redundant and That's otherwise perfect. Thanks.
Board Member Doyle, to address your question, I think about situations in where I've worked for home care agencies, and we dispense total parenteral nutrition to home infusion patients. And I don't know whether the general public would know that that product was compounded or manufactured by a pharmacy as opposed to another situation. So I think it's an additional layer of protection and knowledge sharing with persons not within the medical field, if you will.
So you have it indicating the preparation was compounded, but I mean, would you have more detail than that? Like where it was compounded? Would you have that on the label or?
Board Member Doyle, I'm not prepared to answer that question, but I'm offering my perspective of the fact, examples you used, kept the product within a healthcare facility, and many of these are not staying within the healthcare facility, and we have to be concerned about the lay public, protection as well. I saw a hand going up over, staff, Board Member Beeman.
Remember, Beeman, item, or, number parentheses, number 6, it says the compounding facility name and contact. So that is on like the label. So it's, yes, it's compounded and this is by who. Kind of, in full transparency.
Member Patel.
Remember Patel, follow USP 797 labeling requirement.
Member Evans.
No comment.
Member DeBarmore.
Board Member DeBarmore. To this Board Member Joyce, for number 4. And if it does go out of the facility or off campus, it would have the facility name, the pharmacy information on it. So the fact that it was compounded isn't required or recommended in 97. So I think that's an element that we remove the requirement.
Member Davis in USP 797, it says the labeling on the CSP should indicate that the preparation is compounded. It's a should, just like we saw in CNSPs. Section 13. Fourth line from the bottom, depending on the version.
Board Member DeBarmore, it seems as if this rule would take a USP should and change it into an Oregon must. You are or are not in support of that?
Well, I truly missed that sentence. I was looking at all the bullets and numbers. But I'm for me, that one, I think I would still leave it as a should and leave it off of this one.
Member Hall?
Member Hall, I am fine with everything. I would just not include 4.
For 4 being preparation.
And that the preparation is compounded.
Member Beeman?
Remember, Beeman, I'm more comfortable with keeping the requirements as an USP. However, it appears this is a rule to some extent already. Is that what I heard? Or David, like parts of this is already in our rules.
And so the language that you do not see struck or underlined is the language that is currently in rule. The strikes are things we're removing from the old rule to make the new rule, and the old underline is the new things that we are adding to.
My issue lie in item 2, where it says route, which is helpful. However, in thinking in a retail compounding setting, route there can be different routes for injectables if you're talking about certain types of injectables that patients are giving themselves on a routine basis. And so sometimes that's discussed with the prescriber and not. So the route could be one of two ways depending on patient preference or comfort or ease. But it's already there, so I guess it's working. And number 3, the rate of infusion or titration parameters. I understand that from a healthcare setting or an IV point of view. However, the word parenteral, according to Merriam-Webster, is anything situated or occurring outside the intestine. So that then would, and I guess it would be an enforcement thing, would that be for something that is parenteral, i.e. an IM, like an IM or a subcutaneous injection? They wouldn't really have a rate of infusion or titration parameter. So I just want to make sure we're not putting things in limbo by using word parenteral a little too broadly. Thanks.
Board Member Doyle, in general, I'm supportive of the language as written. Board Member Chin.
Member Chin, supportive language is written with the question mark on number 4.
Board Member Doyle, it seems as if we have some building consensus for support for this section as written, with further consideration as to whether or not compounding should be listed as a requirement for the label of the preparation. Member Davis.
Staff Member Davis will move to 855-183-0420, labeling batch preparation. We changed the name of this rule from labeling for future use to batch preparation since it went out for rulemaking in July 2023. These rules apply to both CNSPs and CSPs that are prepared for future use. The label of a CNSP and CSP that is prepared in anticipation of a patient-specific prescription must contain the following. Paren 1, the name, strength, or concentration and quantity of each active ingredient used in the compounded drug preparation. 2, the total quantity or volume of the compounded drug preparation. 3, internal lot number. 4, the assigned beyond use date. 5, indication that the preparation is compounded. And 6, handling, storage, or drug-specific conditions, cautionary information, and warnings as necessary. Back to you, Board President Doyle.
Can we begin conversation on this section with Board Member Patel?
Question is must versus may, or do you want this section? This is a new section, right? Correct. Okay. I would just say go with may or should.
Comment,
For the Barmore?
Board Member DeBarmore. So just want to make sure that it's clear for CSPs, this includes repackaging. So this, as it's an odd way packaging is defined as compounding in USP. So these labeling requirements would be for buying up several syringes in anticipation of what you're going to do that day. So I can understand all but indicating it's compounded. That's the one that doesn't make sense in that scenario. So if it's not, even though it's defined as compounding, it's not truly compounded. It's not a combination of drugs. So it would be silly to put that on a syringe that all you've done is just drawn it up a smaller size. So I think how to tease that out.
So it's a compounded product.
It's not compounded, no,
And
it's
these rules-
using a sterile syringe, like I'm pulling up real doses of whatever. This is not my Botox to be injected later. I know all these patients are coming in today. I'm drawing up all these doses in from a big dose into bitty doses. I label each of those syringes, but I wouldn't put on there, this is compounded. But that's compounding by 797 definition, if it's done in the sterile environment.
Member Davis, when we worked on this rule and when we discussed it with the work group, I don't remember that scenario being
Sure.
discussed. So that would be something we'll need to go back and work on. I remember specifically the conversation about like my facility makes a bunch of bags for this particular product and then we redistribute it within our health system and, so making sure that it has what's needed, but not more than what's needed. That was more of the conversation rather than what you're discussing. So we'll need to do some more work.
Perfect, because like a lot of those products aren't available to purchase. You have to do it within your healthcare facility. Whole bunches of syringes of lidocaine or, all of those things. So.
Member Hall?
Member Hall, yeah, I have the same question, and then just, indication that the preparation is compounded. I mean, if it's hand signed, a staff member that works in the facility, then is that indication enough that it's compounded? That's about that line, but everything else is fine.
Member Bean?
Remember Beeman, I did have questions with number 5 that were different, but now that number 5 is on the table as questions, and I'm okay with that. Number 2, though, the total quantity or volume of the compounded drug preparation. I don't understand why that would need to be on the label. And I could be just not recognizing situations that is important, but the total that you're then pulling from, or the total you started with, could be easily found by referencing the compounding log to make that batch, because your batch number would align with that. So that number 2 is kind of a why use space for this.
Board Member Doyle, additional comments, Board Member Chin?
Don't know how to comment.
Member Joyce?
Barbara Joyce, it looks good as written. I do have a question about line 5. I mean, for example, let's say you mix a liter or 500 mils of vancomycin and it's been compounded into a large bag. However, you need to withdraw from there a certain amount for a number of syringes or let's say an antibiotic that you further batch from that large volume. So at one point it was compounded, maybe not the actual syringe or the IV bag that you redistributed it to, repackaged it to. I really don't think that needs to be there personally. The volume, I believe so, definitely. So, what to put on the label when we're, fencing it to a patient, 100 ml bag, 250 ml bag, 10 ml, 20 ml syringe. The volume, to me, I've always seen, in batch preparation. The indication that it's compounded, a little bit redundant. So I just want to put that into question. Looking for feedback from stakeholders regarding that. Otherwise, it's fine with me.
Member Beaman?
Beeman, I just want to ask a clarifying question. So you read, you, Board Member Joyce, read the total quantity or volume compound of it as in what's contained in a container, not the total volume compounded, i.e. what was made. Because I read item 2 as what was made.
The total quantity or volume of the compounded drug preparation.
What's in a syringe or what's in a bag, whereas I read it as we made a batch of 500 capsules.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at this.
Yeah,
but the
so I
view
just-
of
Just
compound-
the language around that one, because hearing you speak, it's like, well, yeah, that makes sense, that would want to be on there. But I read it completely differently, like this is just valuable space, so interesting, thank you.
I'm looking at it from the eye of CSPs mostly, because my experience with CNSPs, I don't have that much, but however, I have a ton of experience with CSPs. And that's just, I just want to send that back to stakeholders.
Board Member Doyle, it appears we have support for 855-183-0420 with additional research requested in a variety of small places from board members and to get feedback from the public. Member Davis.
Member Davis, next rule is 855-183-0450 for drug disposal. This language is from the NABP model rules for drug compounding. Both 795 and 797 require the handling of hazardous drugs to comply with USP 800. This rule points out that disposal is included in handling. There was a modification since it went to rulemaking that was made due to work group feedback that outlets don't deal with infectious waste. And so we changed it to only say pharmaceutical waste. So the drug outlet pharmacy, DIPTO, CF, and CHC must ensure the disposal of hazardous pharmaceutical waste is in accordance with the applicable state and federal laws and USP 800. Then standards document by reference. Back to you, Board President Doyle.
Board Member Doyle speaking. Board Member Hemmings, any comments? Member Gabarmore,
Board Member tomorrow morning.
Member Hall,
Board Member Hall, no comment.
okay. Board Member Bean,
Member Beeman, no comment.
Board Member Doyle, I have no questions or concerns. Board Member Chin,
Questions or concerns?
Chris,
No concerns.
Member Patel,
Member Patel. Comments.
Member Davis,
Staff Member Davis will move to 855-183-0500. It's line 828 for those on the phone. Policies and procedures. So prior to the first work group meeting, the second work group meeting, the members were provided with 2 ASHP documents that summarize the SOPs, standard operating procedures, that are required by both USP 795 and 797. Links to these documents are included in the gray box that was in this mailing. Unlike other lists of requirements in the standards, there's not a single list of required SOPs in the standards, which requires one to search the document for phrases like SOP, must-have policy, etc. ASHP, which is the document that we've linked in the gray box, lists 20 SOPs for 795 and 46 SOPs for 797. In a few cases, the SOP requirement and the USP standard is identical, but in most cases, there's a slight difference in the wording or the requirement. Rather than only try to include SOPs not mentioned in the standard rule, agency staff have revised the broad SOP language already included in our current rules to reflect the updated list of SOPs. So the lead-in will now read, each drug outlet pharmacy, Dipto, CF, and CHC must establish, maintain, and enforce policies and procedures in accordance with the standards required in OAR 855-183-200 for all aspects of the compounding operation, according to the type of compounding performed, and it gives examples, and must include written procedures for 1, personnel qualifications to include training and ongoing competency assessment. 2, hand hygiene. 3, garbing. 4, engineering and environmental controls to include equipment certification and calibration, air and surface sampling, and viable particles. 5, cleaning activities to include sanitizing, disinfecting, including those compounding personnel and other staff responsible for cleaning. 6, components to include selection, receipt, handling, storage, and disposal. 7, creating master formulation records with documented approval by a pharmacist or a drug outlet pharmacy or prescriber with prescribing and dispensing privileges for a Dipto, CF, or CHC. 8, creating compounding records. 9, establishing beyond use states or BUDs. 10, labeling. 11, continuous quality assurance program and quality controls to include A, release testing, in product evaluation, and qualitative testing. B, complaint handling process. C, adverse event and error reporting process. And D, recall procedure. And 12, completed compounding preparations to include handling, package storage, and transport. That's all. Let's end the rule. Back to you, Board President Doyle, for discussion.
Board Member Doyle will begin discussion on this Rule 0500 with Board Member DeBarmore.
Board Member DeBarmore, I don't have anything. And, think that stakeholders would appreciate this list. Be interested to hear.
Member Hall.
All. The one ongoing competency assessments. Be fine with frequency. The once is good.
Governor Davis, the outlet is writing a policy and procedure. They would need to define that in their policy and procedure. We don't get that specific. We just say, you need to have a policy about this, then they can determine the policy itself.
I don't know, same as competency assessment, ongoing, I guess that means you can't do it once, okay. Under 10A was confused by the release testing and product evaluation. So are we saying that all outlets who compound need to have a procedure for all those things listed? Like, I feel like I was reading this wrong, but.
Member Davis, it's in the lead-in. You only have to have a policy and procedure if your compounding operation has that type of compounding performed. So like in product release testing would only apply like CSPs with certain, elements. And if you're not doing that, then you wouldn't have to have a policy and procedure.
So confused about that. And then number 12. handling, packaging, storage, and transport. So we need to have a procedure for how we transport everything that's made in the facility. Is that how I'm reading that?
Catherine or Davis, this is an existing rule. You already have to have that policy and procedure, but it's only if you're compounding that this would apply.
Then in the note at the end, I guess I don't remember my notes exactly, but I had highlighted, I just had a question where it says patient level recall. Is that the same as a class 1 recall?
Staff member Davis, this is a note for staff once you have a discussion on a further rule. So this may not even apply. So this is just a note for us to remember that if you change that rule or remove that rule, we don't do in the proposed rule that we'll talk about later. We don't talk about level 1, 2, 3. That's an FDA manufacturing recall segregation, which is not, when you're manufacturing or compounding at a pharmacy, you're not under that FDA classification system. So we kind of utilized their framework, but didn't call out level 1, 2, 3.
Okay, well, those are the things that I was confused about, so I'm interested to see what stakeholders say. Thank you.
Member Beeman?
Board Member Beeman, I have nothing to add to this and look forward to public comments.
Board Member Doyle supports as written. No additional questions or comments. Board Member Chin?
No additional comments.
Member Joyce?
Board Member Joyce, yeah, looking at this, it seems like a lot of it is already in USP 797 in regards to added sterile compounding. I'm looking forward to getting the feedback. In regards to Board Member Hall's question about the delivery component. Were you wondering if it's for every single IV mix? Yeah, that's what I thought you were going. I don't know. I'm hoping it's just like a general note about how you deliver or how an institution delivers their meds to the patients within a facility via tube system, via hand delivery, via Pyxis. I'm hoping it's not for every single bag made via locked cabinet, etc. But that's what I'm assuming it means. Like I said, it seems a lot of this with the hand hygiene, the gardening, that's all covered in USP 797 for CSPs. Yeah, I mean, I don't have anything other than that. Just
Member Patel?
But just for clarification, you mentioned something for staff, for consult, that work group member suggest all these changes? Like, kind of a little bit confused there. What did you say?
Oh, no. So we looked at the USP staff, looked at the USP standards, identified there's not just a simple list within the USP standards, like everything else, they have boxes in there and they say, you must have a this, and this. They don't do that for policies and procedures. It's very scattered. And so we looked at the standard and then we also utilized some other outside references like the ASHP's list and just made sure that this list encompassed what was required in that. I mean, it's just requiring the facility to have a procedure if they do that type of compounding. The work group did see this rule and have a chance to comment on it. I don't remember any robust discussion or take this, remove that. We showed it to them. I don't remember a further discussion on it, so.
Gotcha. So board staff make a list and asking work group member for the feedback. Okay. No, I do not have any comment, but I can't wait to hear back from the public comment.
Board Member Henry, Member Patel, that was a comment. You said you have no comment. No, nothing to add.
Board Member Doyle, no significant recommendations from the board members, it appears, and that the plan would be moving ahead to be providing this for public consumption at a later time. With that, we are moving to our lunch break. It is currently 12:01. We'll resume the meeting with continuing our conversation on drug compounding at 1 p.m. With regard to the security of the room, board staff must secure the room for the lunch break, and we ask our public guests who are present with us today to depart the room and return at 1 p.m. Thank you.